When I started this channel, one of my main goals was to explore a simple but fascinating question. Why do people choose a career in law enforcement? I assumed there would be a common theme, maybe even a predictable answer. But now, after recording more than 125 episodes, I've learned there has never been the same answer twice. Along the way, I've been fortunate that nearly every guest has recommended others for me to interview. Around episode 104, one of those recommendations reminded me of an incident from my own time on the job. Like many stories in law enforcement, if you weren't there, you only catch rumors or fragments of the truth. This was one of those stories. For those who were with DEA at the time, you probably know only the basics. For those who weren't, you've likely never heard of it at all. In this episode, I was finally able to speak with the agent at the heart of the story. She graciously agreed to share her experience, one she has never spoken about publicly before. So why do people go into law enforcement? This may be an answer you'll never hear again. Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Yes, I am Stacy Weathers. I am a retired DEA agent.
Okay. Would anybody have known you by another name?
Yes, when I hired on, I was Stacy Mareno.
Okay. And have you ever told your story before?
No, sir, this is the first time.
Okay. Tell me what you wanted to do growing up.
Growing up, I really didn't have one idea of what I wanted to do. I fluctuated from being a nurse to being an actress to being a singer, which was never going to pan out. And in this last move, when I moved from overseas back home, I was going through some items that was in my collection, and I found a workbook that I had done when I was in the third grade. And it said, what is your favorite color? What is, your favorite animal? What do you want to be when you grow up? And apparently in the third grade, I put, I want to be a policeman. So who would have thought that that would come true?
No recollection of how that even came out. You
No
were so young.
recollection. No, and it was quite a surprise when I saw it, but it was a good surprise.
What did your parents do?
So my father was a navigator in the Air Force. So he was an officer with the E-3 AWAC planes, which is what brought us to Oklahoma City. My mom worked outside the home. She is a pharmacist technician.
Okay.
And so I was that generation of latchkey kids and thrown into every after school event and sport and hobby that I could be thrown into. And so I really grew up in what I would say is a solid, just middle class Midwestern upbringing. It was very idyllic. I had a great group of friends going to school. There was no drama, no any of the things that people are dealing with today with bullying or everything like that. It was just such a wonderful, wholesome upbringing, and very, very grateful for that family life that they taught me.
Later on, we're going to talk about a little bit of the patriotism that you
Mhm.
felt in certain assignments that you had. Where do you think that came from? Do you think it came from your parents? You think it came from growing up in small town Oklahoma?
I think small town Oklahoma definitely played a role, but I believe most of it came from my dad. He was very patriotic, being with the Air Force. We would go watch the Thunderbirds fly. We would do all the patriotic events at the military base. And I remember just being so proud walking beside him on the military base, him in his uniform or his flight suit, and me just tagging along and just being in awe of what that represented, which I didn't fully understand at the time, but came to understand later on in life.
Any siblings?
I have an older brother, 2.5 years, and so we were buddies growing up until the age where we reached teenagers, and my interests were not his, and we kind of went our separate ways. But
Right.
yeah.
So you were involved in sports. What was your sport of choice?
My favorite sport was softball, and that was probably the first sport that I started, I want to say about 5, 6 years old, and continued playing it all the way through high school, recreationally through college, and then as an adult.
Okay. Do you think playing a sport helped you out later on in your law enforcement career?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do believe that that is something that all children should do because there's so many values that come from playing a sport, especially a team sport, and realizing that the goal of the team is far greater than just one person.
Yeah.
And that when your teammate is having a bad time or a bad day, step up and be the leader to help them out and know that they're going to do that for you as well. So a lot of values come from playing team sports, I believe.
What kind of kid were you growing up?
Very energetic.
Okay.
Some might say outspoken. I would very rarely back down from a challenge. I would just run headfirst into it, very determined. If I set my mind on something, I would go after it. Some might call it stubbornness, but I like to say that it was more just determination.
So as you went through high school and college, what did you want to do?
So it took me a while to kind of get to where I wanted to go, and life helped me form that decision. I did know very early on, as early as sixth grade, we were in social studies class, and we were reading this article about the pyramids in Egypt. And I just remember feeling in that moment, without a question, one day I'm going to see that. One day I'm going to be in this photo. So I feel like, although I didn't understand it fully at the time, I did have somewhat of a wanderlust or a gypsy streak, however you want to call it. And it wasn't so much, I need to break out of this small town because it's just so suffocating. I loved my life, but I felt the pull from this great big world out there. And I just knew within me, I had to go see it. I had to go experience it. I didn't know how that was going to come about.
Hmm.
So, as I went through school, my senior year in high school, my father passed away, which kind of rocked my world, as you can imagine, and my family's world. And after he retired from the Air Force, but before he passed, he had gone back to school and became an accountant. And from what he said, he loved it. And so I thought, well, this is something I think I'm going to try. So, by the grace of God, I had a great friend my senior year in high school, and she was applying to Oklahoma State University. And she kind of helped me walk through that process because I still was reeling from the father's death. And so she helped me apply, and she helped me apply to Russia's sorority. And she guided me through getting me into college. And I will forever be grateful to her for that. And then when I got into college, I had a wonderful 4 year college experience. It was great. I ended up graduating with a double degree in marketing and accounting. And so towards the end of my senior year in college, I was in communication with Hertz Rent a Car because they had their headquarters here in Oklahoma City, and they were recruiting me to come work in their accounting department. So after college, I think I had a weekend off to do what college kids do. And then the following Monday, I started in their accounting department. And I can tell you pretty quickly that I realized 8 hours at a desk crunching numbers was not the perfect fit for me. And so I said, well, what else? What can I do? What am I going to use to chart my course in life? And so I said, well, it just makes sense that I would go back and get a master's degree because it just seemed like the next logical step to me. So I worked during the day. I went to class at night, and a year and a half later, I had my MBA. Still doing the same job, which is still not a fit. At the same time, I'm a umpire for softball. So I would work Monday through Friday and then umpire softball games at night and on the weekends. And I would be an umpire for little league all the way up to professional softball and men's and women's. And there's a lot of life lessons that come with doing that. And I also said this is not going to be a long-term career plan either. So a friend of mine that was working with me at Hertz, her husband owned a bar, just a small neighborhood bar, nothing fancy. And she had said, one of our bartenders quit. Do you want to just fill in? And I said, sure, why not? I'm down for anything. I'll do whatever. And so I start working there. And then one night I'm working and the bar was not particularly crowded, and a guy walks in, a tall, handsome, larger than life person walks through the door and immediately caught my eye. And when he walked in, he had somewhat of a serious face on, but after a second or two, he just lit up with this beautiful smile that not only lit up his face, it lit up the whole room. And I was done. At that point, I was just done. And that was my husband, Frank Mareno.
How old are you?
I was 26.
26. So you guys start dating right away?
We start dating. We spent quite a lot of time together from the very beginning. We just enjoyed each other's company. We enjoyed the same activities. And the one thing that I learned early on with him was he was a DEA agent. And I learned how important that was to him and how passionate he was. He was one of those people, if you said, what is your identity or how do you identify yourself as? DEA agent. It was first and foremost with him. And not only did I see his passion for doing the job, but this was a year or two after the Oklahoma City bombing. And unfortunately, DEA lost people in that bombing. And I went with him to a memorial that was held on the land where the Murrah building stood. And I just saw how emotional he got and his interaction with other DEA people at that. And it just left such a huge impression on me. And that was just such a big part of who he was.
Prior to you starting to date Frank, did you have any idea what DEA was or what they did?
I had heard of it. And in fact, one of our very first conversations, he said, told me what he did. And he said, do you even know what DEA stands for? And I said, confidently, of course I do. And, oh, okay, what does it stand for? And I said, Drug Enforcement Agency? And he was like, no, administration. So I can't say that I knew a lot about it beforehand. Mm-hmm. But I did come to understand what it stood for, what the mission was, which was very much who I was. I was, zero tolerance with drugs. I didn't grow up in that environment. In fact, I don't even think I saw drugs in my high school or college. It wasn't a part of my world. It was very taboo. And so I was always, zero tolerance on that. So
when you were married and dating him, did he talk about what the mission was? Did you get a sense of what he was doing?
I got a sense in a very superficial way. He never got into details on his cases or what he was doing, or if he was out on an operation or whatever, he would just say, I'm working. It wasn't into the details that I then learned when I became an agent.
So tell me how this progresses. You date for how long before you get married?
We dated for a year and a half, and we were then having conversations because he knew he wanted to go overseas. So we were having conversations about that, and top on his list was Bogota, Colombia. He wanted to go where the action was, and being the same mindset, I understood. So we were having those conversations, and he got picked up. He got selected to go to Bogota. And so the plan was he would go and check it out, get things situated, and then I would follow. And in there, we would get married, and we did.
Okay. Do you get married before you go to Colombia?
I went down for what was going to be a visit, just an initial visit to see how it was going to work out, if I was going to like it. And that turned into a longer term visit, which ended up going to the States to get married and then me returning as his wife.
How did it work at the time, Stacy? You guys aren't married. Was DEA, were they going to allow you to go down and live with him if you weren't married?
So technically, the answer is no.
Okay.
They did allow visits from girlfriends, family members, wives, whatever. So they did allow that. I do recall when I was down there having a conversation with his GS and telling her, this is our plan. And I think that that's why I was probably allowed to stay a little bit longer, because it was in the works that we were going to come back to the States and get married.
Any worry of danger at that time in Colombia for you personally?
For me personally, although he talked to me about it and I knew it, I was so young and naive at the time that I don't think I fully absorbed it. I would walk from our apartment to the gym to work out, and although aware of my surroundings, just not that heightened sense that I probably should have had. But I was the young girl in love, and I'm on this adventure in another country, and I'm meeting wonderful people through him that I probably was more naive than I should have been.
Mm. How does it work or how did it work for you in Colombia as a spouse? Were you attending fancy parties? How did it work overseas?
So that does happen. There are fancy parties, there are get-togethers. I also experienced this, later on in my career, that when you're overseas, the DEA community really does come together because you're in a foreign country and you rely very much on one another, for the good times and the bad. So I was very fortunate to meet quite a few people in his office, get to know some of the females that worked in his office, as well as some of the spouses of the agents. And so there was a lot of interaction and dinners, and the wives would get together and go do things, and it was a tight knit group.
What was your plan when you went down to Colombia? Did you have a sense of what you were going to do? Were you going to be a spouse? Were you going to try and get a job at the embassy? What did you think you were going to do?
It was so early in our relationship and in our marriage that while we had all these great plans and things that we wanted to do and dreams and all of that, the short term was I was going to go to Bogota, get a job at the embassy, and just enjoy married life for a while. And although we had conversations about starting a family, unfortunately that didn't happen, but we were just in the beginning stages of charting our own course before everything happened.
How long were you there before the incident?
I got there on Valentine's Day, and the incident happened around Thanksgiving of that year.
Okay. So what happens?
If it's okay with you, I would like to tell that story from my point of view.
Absolutely.
Because I have learned that there are various rumors about what happened. I've heard people tell me their versions of what they heard, and in the game of telephone, by the time it gets back to me, it is so far from the truth. And I just want to honor him by not going down the road of speculation or feeding into that, because I know what I know, and I know what my truth is. And that's what I will always hang on to. Mm-hmm. And will always be a part of me. But for me, that night, Frank was out, and he was out with buddies. So I was at the apartment, and I knew he was going to be out. It was probably going to be late, as guys can tend to do from time to time, right? But as the night went on, I got a feeling. I got an uncomfortableness and a worry that I had never experienced, even when I knew Frank was working. Just a worry that something is not right, and I could feel it in my stomach, and I had just nerves. I don't know how else to describe it. And at one point, I tried to go to bed and go to sleep, and I couldn't go to sleep. And at one point in the night, I don't know. I say 11. I don't know because it is a snapshot in time for me. So I don't know. But I got a phone call, and this before cell phones, right? So the landline. So I pick it up, and it was one of the other agents who I had met several times, and I thought was a nice guy, and I had met him and his wife, and I knew that he had been partnered up with Frank on some ops or whatever they're doing, and he called and he just said, "Hey, Stace, how you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean? How am I doing?" And he said, "Well, hey, where's Frank? Is Frank there? Can I talk to him?" And I knew by how he said it, what he said, that something was wrong. And my response to him was, "Larry, you know he's not here. Where is he?" And he said, "Hey, Stacey, I know I don't really know. I'll call you right back. Let me do some checking. I'll call you right back." And that was what happened. And then later, I don't know the time frame, there's a knock on the door. And I open the door, and it's one of the supervisors from the office. And standing next to him was the wife of another agent who I had become close with. And she's crying her eyes out. And they did not have to say a word. They didn't have to say a word. So they came in, they gave me a hug, and my life was forever changed.
Stacy, why did the other guy call you? What was that about?
I found out later. He was the duty agent, and when Frank was taken to the hospital, it became apparent rather quickly he was a DEA agent. The hospital reached out to the embassy, U.S. citizen. This is what happened. Embassy said internally he's a DEA agent, so they contacted the DEA duty agent, and then that's why he called me.
Okay. So what happens? Do you tell me about?
So I don't have a clear storytelling of the moment, because although I have relived it countless times, it comes in snapshots of time. So I just remember falling apart. I remember trying to collect myself and somebody saying, "Do you want to go see him?" I said, "Absolutely." So I remember them taking me to the hospital and walking me into the room where he was. And they said, "Do you want to be alone?" And I said, "Yes."
What happened? Yeah, as best as you know the story, what happened?
From what I have been told and the limited reporting that I have read, he was out with a buddy and they were at a bar. There's another individual in the bar hitting on a girl, flirting with a girl. Frank perceives it as unwanted attention towards this girl, intervenes, as I know he would do, to help the underdog, to protect. And it escalated. Words were exchanged. I don't know that there were any hands-on anything inside the bar, but I do know that as they left the bar, they came together again, and it reignited. And as is the case in Colombia, people carry guns. So as it spilled out into the parking lot, the fight ensues. The other gentleman takes out a gun, shoots Frank, one bullet, kills him rather quickly. That same bullet passed through Frank, hit another individual, an innocent bystander walking home, and killed him as well.
Tell me the aftermath. Tell me how, as a spouse with DEA, How did they deal with you? I mean, you meet with trauma team members, they're giving you the
Yeah.
support. How does that whole process work?
So for me, it was a rush of chaos. And with that came a lot of good and a lot of bad, right? Everybody's trying to step up, trying to figure out what happened, trying to figure out who is this other guy and how do we get him. There was so much that just kicked off right away. Um, a lot of that outside of me, I don't know because the agents down there, they did the investigation and they ran with what they needed to run with. What I experienced was a sleepless night followed by a meeting with the ambassador who had expressed his condolences to people questioning me. Um, what was going on? What do you know? Which I knew nothing. It was a very helpless feeling. And then pretty quickly, I met with a DEA agent out of Dallas, trauma team member. Her name is Terry, and she became my guardian angel through the whole thing. And she just said to me, "You don't know what you need, but tell me what you think you need, and I will get it for you." And she did.
Hmm.
And she did. And she helped me in coordinating all the logistics of getting a body back to the States and all the steps. The consular section issuing the document death of a U.S. citizen abroad. All these things that I had no idea was going to be part of this, just they took care of, and they took care of me. So logistically, shortly after Terry came down, they made arrangements for my mom to come down. And we were there for a couple days as I was trying to plan a funeral stateside, which was pretty difficult. But DEA stepped in and they said, this is a law enforcement funeral. We're going to help you with this. And so, because Frank was out of Oklahoma City, and as was I, the Oklahoma City office stepped up and they helped out on the state side of the funeral. A funeral was in Oklahoma City with a burial with his family in Berg, Texas.
Hmm.
So it was just a rush of logistics and getting on a plane to the States and just not having a minute to myself to begin processing what happened. And I knew my entire life had changed, but that just is woefully inadequate to describe. And I didn't have the wherewithal at the time to fully understand, because in my mind it was getting through the next step, getting to the funeral, getting to the burial. But in that process, there were a lot of people looking out for me, and I knew it, even though it was straight talk. This is what needs to be done. And I get on a plane and I fly to Houston. It's the first time I'm back in the States. And I land and I walk out, and I knew that Houston personnel were going to be greeting us as we got off the plane and helping us through our journey through the airport and onto Oklahoma City. So I knew to expect that. But what I did not expect was a beautiful agent named Lori.
Yeah, take your time.
A beautiful agent named Lori stood out amongst a sea of men in dark suits. And she gave me the most genuine, most heartfelt smile that I needed. And I've never talked to her. I've never been able to tell her how much that meant. But I look back on it and God bless her for it.
I think your story is, part of the reason why I do this channel is to figure out why people go into law enforcement. And I think your story is kind of one that nobody will ever else hear. At what point during this whole process do you decide, I'm going to become a DEA agent?
I don't know the exact moment where I had that thought. I do recall very vividly when I was in the room alone with Frank and having all sorts of emotions and thoughts all at the same time and not really understanding it, but feeling the passion that he had as an agent and having the thought of, I will continue the fight for you. And I didn't know exactly how that would play out. I didn't know, to be honest, what all a DEA agent really did.
Yeah.
But it was a fight that he was passionate about, and I knew it and I felt it from him. And I said, I'm going to take over.
How long after what happens to Frank are you at the academy? Do you go through the process and actually are you at the academy?
I fortunate for me, Terry, the trauma team member who was amazing to me, also happened to be the recruiter out of Dallas Field Division. And I had conversations with her, not to the extent that I am with you, but telling her, I feel this is what I need to do. I feel this is what I want to do. And she helped me with the process.
Is there skepticism from her though? Is it like, oh,
Yes.
okay.
It was a lot of conversations of, I will help you with the application and I will process you just like anybody else, but I have concerns. You're coming off of a very traumatic incident in your 20s. And up until that point, I had lived a life that just had no bad events, no trauma. Other than my father dying, bad things just didn't happen. I lived in a world with friends and acquaintances whose parents didn't get divorced. I maybe knew 2 people who had a divorce set of parents, and I grew up. You marry and you stay married and in love the rest of your life. That is all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
So now I am without a husband at 20. I don't know anybody else in my shoes. I don't have the resources within myself or, friends to really talk about this with. But what I realized later on, it wasn't just the death of Frank for me. It was really the death of how I viewed the world, because up until that point, I didn't understand that there were bad things in the world. And because of the family life, the life that I had, and probably the naive blinders that you put on, when you're young. And so I didn't know how to begin in this new world. But I knew that I wanted to carry forward for Frank. And I was very adamant about it. And a 20-year-old girl, especially someone as not stubborn but determined as I am, who is filled and fueled by pain, anger, it is a very strong motivating factor to saying, this is what I want to do. I'm putting in my application. This is what I'm going to do. Without any second thought, without putting in an application to any other federal agency, this is what was going to happen. And it did. So 9 months later, I walk into the academy, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, not knowing what to expect, never been to a law enforcement academy before. And guess who greets me at the front door? Lori from Houston. That's a full circle moment.
Wow. What are your parents, not your parents, what is your mom, what is your family thinking? Do they tell you anything like, Stacy, what are you doing? You're crazy.
Yes, yes. There was a lot of, especially from my mom, just sit still, take a breath, figure things out, just calm down, just relax. Don't go head on into being an agent. There was a lot of, are you sure you want to do this? You've seen the dangers of what can happen, and it's not just a story or it's not just a tale that someone tells you. I lived it. Um, and I think my mom knew me so well to know that once I made up my mind, and she knew how I felt about Frank, she knew that there was really no talking me out of it. Now, there were a lot of agents that I became friends with who said, don't do it. Don't do it. Get your mind right. If you want to do it, give it some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't listen.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen. And then when people started realizing she's not going to back down, she is determined and she's driven. Then I started getting different conversations from other agents that I was still friends with. And it was, okay, if you're going to do it, you got to show that you've earned it. You go to the academy in the best shape of your life. It's the only thing you can control. And make sure that you go in there in the best shape of your life. So that's not an issue. You show that you put in the work and you worked hard to get there. Terry, the recruiter, every conversation, every single conversation, you're going through the process, but you have to earn it. You're going to take a polygraph, you got to pass. You're going to take a psych eval, you got to pass. You're going to do a PT test, you better pass. And when you get to the academy, you get your head down and you go straight through it and you earn every bit of it. Because there's skepticism. People are questioning, should she be here? Did she get here just because of what happened? So over time, I just had to earn it.
So I want to talk with you when you get into your career about, how people viewed you and viewed you instant, but at the academy in particular, did you get any sense that people knew who you were and what had happened?
Not so much from my classmates in the beginning. A couple class counselors pretty early on came up to me, hey, I'm sorry what happened, or I heard what happened. Glad you're here. A couple instructors did. I remember, I think it's day 2 of the academy, you take your first PT test or you have your first PT class. And I still don't know how to get to the bathroom at this point, but I go to this class and it is a vision like the people parting like the sea, and you meet your PT instructor for the first time, Mike Bacchios, former partner of Frank's in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
And I did not know him from Oklahoma City. I knew of him and his name through Frank, and they were both baby agents together, had good times together, butted heads on cases together, And then when Frank went to Bogota, I think they parted probably not on great terms, as can happen with type A personalities. But I knew that whole story, but I'd never met the person. Obviously, he knew I was in his class. So the first day, I know I was deer in a headlight look. And he, to his credit, treated me, he didn't acknowledge it. He'd have treated me exactly the same as everybody else, and he never brought it up. The only thing he said to me early on was, you're not going to get a free ride. When it comes to hand-to-hand stuff, boxing, defensive tactics, don't ever let me see you paired with a female. You're going up with a guy every time. 10-4. That's what I did. And that was the only time he acknowledged it until, towards the end of being at the academy, when graduation's on the horizon.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere gets a little bit lighter and instructors start joking around with you more and this, that, and the other. I was in the gym over the weekend and he was in there working out. And, we had at that point, joked a little bit like, Stacy, your push-ups look a little weak today, like that kind of thing. But I went up to him and he was a very muscle-bound guy. And in between bicep curls, which seemed to be his favorite, I said, Mr. Bacchios, he said, you can call me Mike. And I said, I just want to say thank you for not holding it against me. And I didn't have to say anything more than that. I just said, thank you for not holding it against me. Thank you. And he looked at me and he said the exact same thing. Thank you for not holding it against me. And from that point on, he and I were able to have a friendship and we stayed in contact throughout the rest of his career. He retired before I did, but one of my last classes at international training I did in Greece where he was the CA. And it was just a great way to spend some time with him one-on-one, and it was nice.
Let's talk about your experience at the academy. How old are you?
28.
28. So you're going in. I've got to prove myself. I'm in shape. Everything else. But you've never been in the military. You've never been to a police academy.
No.
Is it a shock to the system? How is it for you?
It was. Yes, it was. Luckily for me, there were some females in the class that I am still good friends with to this day. So we went through it together and, we bitched about it together and it was at that time very regimented. So it was just going through one thing to get to another, to get to the next class. And you had the 5 minutes to shower between PT and law, and then you fall asleep in law. And it's the same that everybody else goes through. I think I took it far more seriously than most of my classmates, and far more seriously than I probably should have. But that was just what it was for me. And we ended up having a really good time.
Anything you struggle with?
Without a doubt, firearms.
Okay.
And going into the first qual, there was a lot of, Stacy, you need to tighten this up. Or you're going to be in remedial and then you're going to be shooting for your job. And I couldn't get it. I didn't understand it. I was clearly doing something wrong. And it wasn't until the day before our first qual, we go out to shoot at the 50-yard line. And I guess they don't do that now, but we did back then. And I was like, well, hell, I can't even see the target. So you know what? I guess I'm just going to look at my front sight. 10 rounds, and I get 9 out of 10. And my bay instructor, big, heavy set cornbread, comes over, waddling over. He's like, Mareno, what the hell? And I was like, well, I can't see the target. So I just looked at the front sight, and he's like, well, that's what you should have been doing all along. And I was like, oh, now I get it. So first qual, I go out there, I shoot myself out of remedial, and I made it through.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Stacy, when you're at the academy and this incident happens with Frank, and there's this whole, they're going to chase the guy down, hopefully, and there's going to be a little bit of justice. What ends up happening?
So, when I was still in Bogota before I left, they brought me in and they sat me down and they said, okay, this is what we intend to happen. And the agents are trying to track him down, and the agents are reviewing video footage from across the street, which was grainy and couldn't be enhanced. We are doing things, and they were, to the degree that they could tell me, they told me what was going on. And also at that time, they said to me, the relationship between U.S. and Colombia in terms of drug trafficking and DEA has been very, very tenuous in the past because of fallout after Escobar, but we're back in a good place. So on the one hand, that could work in our favor, that the counterparts would help us. But also on the other hand, DEA doesn't want to overstep and show that they're coming in full force gangbusters, because they don't want any backlash if they were to be perceived that way. And I said, okay. And not knowing, the environment, not knowing anything at the time, and being shell shocked. And then they also said, but what we would also like to do is what we feel you should do is file a civil lawsuit, just as the spouse of an individual killed. You can do that in Colombia. And they start telling me about it. And they said, he'll be charged criminally. He, at that point, I don't think I didn't know the extent to which he and his family was involved in drug trafficking, but it was pretty apparent very, very early on that the family was wealthy and up to no good, whatever that looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize at the time to the extent that they were in drug trafficking. So I was kind of counseled on, it's a bad family, it's a wealthy family. We feel like, you would benefit from, as an individual, not as a DEA widow, but as an individual, filing a civil lawsuit. So when he is brought to justice, then the civil lawsuit, you can claim punitive damages. And so they worked up some kind of worksheet that said, if Frank had lived to full retirement, how much would he be worth? How much would his TSP be worth? And assigned a dollar amount. And so they orchestrated a meeting for me to meet with two Colombian attorneys that they said was part of their vetted unit. They were trusted attorneys that they've worked with, and they felt like these were the individuals that would take my civil case through to fruition. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't know what to say. So I said, okay, absolutely. So I meet with the two attorneys, a female and a male, and the female was taking the lead, and, through a translator, we're talking, and she's, very compassionate, and, I will be your voice. I will stand for you, and this, that, and the other thing. And I remember after the meeting, feeling like it was a good meeting. And I talked to one of the managers there, and I said, well, how is this going to work? Because I'm not here. Don't worry, Stacy, we'll see it through for you. We are here for you. We're going to see it through. We are going to make sure justice is served. He's going to get caught. He's going to do his time. Any co-conspirators, you name it. They told me and assured me that they were going to see things through. So I leave, I'm back in the States, I set on going to the academy, training, working out. And there were some agents who kind of kept me in the loop. Like, hey, this happened, or, some good things are happening. I can't tell you what it is, but definitely keeping me in mind. And then they locate him. He gets caught. He's arrested. I'm sent newspaper articles that show a photo of him, getting off the helicopter and all this and that. So I'm now saying, okay, what's he going to be tried for? How does this work? At the same time, in addition to all of that was going on in Bogota, DOJ Main Justice issues a indictment arrest warrant for the same individual, murder of a U.S. citizen abroad, or whatever that particular statute is. So Maine Justice has a piece of this pie, and we're gonna get it. We're gonna, do whatever happens in Colombia. He's gonna get extradited back to the U.S., and then justice will be served in the U.S. Okay. And I talked with the attorneys at Maine Justice. And so I'm going through putting my life together and getting ready for the academy. I'm getting bits and pieces here and there. And then when I'm at the academy is whenever this guy has his trial. And oddly enough, in my academy class is a fellow student who was with another federal agency in Bogota at the time that I was there. So I had met him in Bogota, and little did I know he was going to sit directly in front of me throughout the entire academy, but he was still pretty dialed in with what was going on in Bogota. And so he's the one that actually told me, yeah, the judge found him guilty, sentenced him to 30 years in prison, and has to pay punitive damages both to me and to the family of the second individual that was killed. However, I don't recall the dollar amount, but this is what the judge's ruling was. Okay, great. I don't hear anything. I find out that he serves maybe 9 months and gets out on a technicality. He makes no punitive payment to me. I don't know if he did to the other family. And then nothing is going on with the civil lawsuit that I have. To the point where a couple of years later, when I'm in San Diego, I go through my chain of command and I say, I want to go down and follow up on my civil lawsuit. Let me go down. I want to do this. I'm not asking you to pay. I will pay. But I feel I owe you the respect to let you know this is what I want to do. And my 15 at the time said, let me reach out to the 15 in Bogota and see what we can do. The 15 in Bogota at the time said, she is not getting country clearance. I do not want her here stirring up shit. So I never made it down there. Now, over time, I have had friends that were stationed in Bogota, and knowing nothing's going to happen, I've said, hey, can you look into this for me? Nothing. So my question is justice served if he only serves 9 months and he's out on a technicality? When we as agents, if we're going after a bad guy and we get an obstacle or a technicality, we're like a bull in a china shop. We're going to go around it and keep going.
Okay, I've got so many freaking questions now. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start from back to forward. 15 denies you country clearance or says you're not going to get country clearance. How does that work as a citizen? I don't have to get country clearance from...
You don't. However, at that time, I was, a lot of people are saying, just, give them time, give the office time. And I was caught, right? I was caught between being a widow and now I'm an agent. So I don't want to go against the agency that I'm now employed by. So I'm trying to play by the rules by notifying my chain of command. But now you've just given the widow of an agent, a gut punch.
Right.
So I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to be outspoken too at the same time. So it was walking a fine line for a while for me.
What was the whole idea of, because I'm sure you don't give two shits about the money. What was the whole idea about, hey, we want you to file a civil suit? Like somehow that was going to be like extra punishment on top of what they thought he was going to get jail time?
It could be. I don't recall the exact words of their guidance at the time of why, but maybe it was. They felt like this is just another hammer to throw down on this guy. I don't know.
Okay,
but I do know as of last year, a friend of mine out of New York, an attorney out of New York, confirmed that Maine Justice still has an open indictment arrest warrant for this guy.
Okay, so that was my question. That was my bigger question, which is Kiki Camarena gets killed and we go to the ends of the earth to hunt down those people. Why wasn't this guy ever brought to the U.S.?
There's a lot of theories, speculation, and I really don't want to. I don't know how to navigate that, to be
Okay.
honest with you.
Sure.
Because I'm not going to take away from a horrific incident that another agent went through just to justify my cause over here, because there's no comparison.
Right.
So I just have to live in my truth, and that's what it was. It is very hard as an agent to have my agency say, we never leave anybody behind.
Right.
And then this is how this incident has been handled. It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yeah. I mean, it seems very, very politically motivated, having to deal with the United States-Colombia relationship and, you know, that relationship as opposed to getting justice for Frank.
Correct. And, you know, there, unfortunately, we have lost another agent in Colombia, and it received a far different outcome and reaction from DEA personnel. So I don't know if it was personality driven.
Mm-hmm.
Was it, you know, Frank was a love him or hate him kind of guy? Had he pissed off somebody? And I don't want to say that an agent didn't follow through.
Sure.
Because they had a beef with Frank. I'm not saying that at all, but mm-hmm. I'm trying to look at that specific scenario and what it could have been. And, you know, were people down there not wanting to cause waves? Were they wanting to get promoted? Did they not like Frank? Like, I don't know. Was the political environment really that tenuous that you couldn't say, hey, an agent was killed? Let's go to the wall and find out what, you know, I don't know. And it's a struggle that I have depending on what my mood is of the day, what I feel about it.
But as far as you know, there's still an active arrest warrant for this guy?
Yes. There is some consideration about double jeopardy. So, you know, in the eyes of Colombian law, he was let go on a technicality. So now if he's tried in the U.S., is that double jeopardy? Because technically in Colombian law, he did his due, right?
Yeah.
So I guess there just hasn't been the attorney to get to the bottom of that.
Any sense of why he only ended up doing 9 months out of a 30-year sentence?
I believe, or I have been told.
Okay.
This technicality came in under the speculation of a payment made. I don't know if it's 100% true. Mm-hmm. Maybe part of it's true. Maybe it's not true at all. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
So I just have to, you know, go with that. Yeah. And just go with the facts of he killed my husband and he did 9 months.
Family come back to watch you graduate?
Yes. My family definitely stood by me through the really dark times. And so they all wanted to celebrate the good times. So big road trip from Oklahoma all the way to DC. They go to graduation. And I think it was at that time where they started to kind of understand DEA is bigger than we thought. It's a bigger deal than what we thought. Now we understand what's driving Stacy and what's driving all the agents, but now we understand Stacy a little bit better and why she was so driven to get here, to get through it and become an agent.
I always ask this of DEA guys and FBI guys. Mm-hmm. What was your impression of watching the difference between the training between DEA and FBI?
Well, that's a loaded question, right? Of course, we made fun of him. Like, really? Are you guys doing DT in khakis? Like, seriously? It was just a joke. And we would run by, like, the time we're shooting shotguns on the range, and we'd run by with our shotguns in the air and just like, yeah, you pussy, it just, we would do it. Of course, we would make fun of it. And maybe they made fun of us too, but we didn't care. We were far superior.
Okay, so your first assignment is San Diego.
Yes.
Okay. Why do you end up there? How do you end up there?
At the academy at that time, they gave a list of 50 locations that had available spots to correlate with the 50 students. And it was kind of amongst ourselves to talk about, okay, this person wants this place, or this person has a family reason to go to this place. And so as best we could, we tried to work it out amongst ourselves. And then we would turn in a list that had our top 3 locations. And at that time, the DEA policy was you could not go back to the division where you hired out of. So I knew I wasn't coming back to Oklahoma or Texas or anything that fell under the Dallas Field Division. And in talking with agents that were on the job with Frank, I got a lot of input on, you want to go to an office that's got a lot of work. You want to hit the ground running. San Diego has also a good quality of life. It is, in some eyes, viewed as a border spot. So if you were to look at promotion or another assignment, maybe you could, talk it up as being a hardship. San Diego's not a hardship. It's beautiful, but it's a hardship financially going out as a GS9 with hardly any money. But so I took their advice and it worked out. I got assigned to Group 3, which at the time was a Clan Lab group. But they had just finished a months-long T3. So it was kind of at a time where they were starting to generate new cases and getting back to work after shutting down the T3. So we did a little bit of everything. I do remember my very first week on the job, day 2, I'm doing a search warrant. I was horrible. I was at the back of the pack, thank God. Day 2, doing a search warrant. Day 3, we're out.
Why do you think you were horrible?
Oh, just because I thought I knew the tactics. I knew the tactics that were taught at the academy, which was, textbook. And then you get out there and it's like a free for all and people are bum rushing it. So you're like, okay, so it's not really as rigid as what we were taught. But anyway, all's well that ends well. And day 3, we're doing a surveillance, and I had a great FTA. He said, we need someone in the air, someone in the helicopter. You want to be an aerial spotter? And I said, absolutely. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to do it. I get in the helicopter, and in hindsight, it's probably not best to have someone who has just moved to San Diego to be an aerial spotter. I'm like, there's a big body of water, guys. We don't have that in Oklahoma. I don't know if it's on the east or the west, but it's there, and the car's not going towards it. It was ridiculous. The pilot's laughing at me. I was so ineffective. And they asked me to do it one other time after that. And I did a little bit better, but I was like, this is not for me. And then the Friday of my first week, there's another girl in the group named Sue. The first Friday on the job, she and I go undercover together and buy a couple pounds of meth.
Did you like it? Did you like Undercover?
I did. Your first time out, you're just following the lead of somebody else. But that was something that I did take to, and I think being a female, I think maybe at the time there's 5 in the whole division. It was ample opportunity. If a case agent wanted any female undercover, yeah, of course I'll do it. And I also got pretty quickly paired up with another guy who I am still very good friends with, who was the ultimate undercover, at least in my opinion. He could buy anything from anybody and get a discount. He was just good, but not in a flashy way, not in an over the top kind of the way. He was just good. He could go in and talk to anybody. We did undercover. One of the first times I did undercover with a guy high on meth. I was like, what is going on with this guy? And my buddy, he just calmly talked him down, listened to him. We got the deal done. I learned a lot of undercover tips and tricks from him.
Did you do a lot of undercover in your career?
I did do a fair amount.
Okay.
I did do a fair amount.
Couple questions for something you mentioned. So you said you started off as a GS9. Was that because you had your master's?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So for the audience, most people start off as a 7, depending on your educational level. Okay. And I want to hit on this topic a little bit later on as you get into international training and stuff. And you and I talked about this yesterday, being a female with DEA. So I think when I got hired on, it was like 3,500, maybe 3,800 worldwide, pretty exclusive group. But as a female, it's even more exclusive.
Yes.
So let's just say you come walking into a conference of DEA agents. Is you notice another female DEA agent? Is there a little special wink, handshake? Do you acknowledge each other?
Well, I can't tell you if we have, a secret handshake or not, but there is strength in coming together as women, and definitely in this career. So it's not an immediate, hey, we're going to come up and be friends, but over the course of a conference or over the course of a case or a career, you're going to gravitate to one another. And the ladies that I first met when I got to San Diego were great. They were great. Some I am still very, very good friends with to this day. One of my best friends that I went through the academy with ultimately ended up in San Diego, and still very, very close to her. And I was finding myself in San Diego, finding out what kind of agent am I going to be. What does an agent do? It was just so new to me, but also, San Diego was so difficult for me personally and socially because I'm 20. I'm still dealing with the aftermath of losing my husband, and I'm with these amazing women who don't know what that trauma is, or at least we didn't talk about it. And I just felt so out of place. And, they were 20 somethings too, but they were out there having a great time, finding their husbands and their forever. And I'm dealing with not having that. And I always felt, not inadequate, not an outcast, not comfortable. And God bless them for accepting me for who I was, maintaining a friendship with me over the years, and letting me be me and work through that. And we're better friends now for it. So thankful for all of that.
Tell me about the challenges that you had. And I don't know if it happened throughout your entire career, but certainly in the beginning, the challenges you had of this aura of Frank in the background.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, because we talked about this yesterday, but describe that challenge for me.
I don't know if I can completely describe it to where it makes perfect sense, but it was definitely a cloud that I walked with all the time. It was a motivating factor in me getting to become an agent. But at some point I had to get out from under that cloud and say, okay, I got here because of somebody else's passion that I wanted to see through for them, but now it's my passion. And I did struggle with, how do I maintain my independence? How do I now become Agent Stacy instead of Frank's widow, Stacy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a lot of that, it kind of, there was a lot of things that held me back in making that transition, because by the time I got to San Diego, a lot of people knew it. And not only did they know it, but they knew their version. So I would get people that would come up and go, hey, I heard this happen. no, that's not how it happened. Or, hey, I was really sorry about that. It was being brought to me, and oftentimes being brought to me inaccurately. And as a recent widow, it was just in me to defend Frank, to defend his honor, to defend him as an agent, to defend the circumstances that led to his death. But what I found as I became an agent is agents aren't always going to see eye to eye. Type A agents are going to get into it over informants or over, end of the year buy money, whatever it's going to be. And if you are out there doing your job, full throttle, you're not going to get along with everybody. So I had to make the conscious decision to step back from that role and just say, I am the memory keeper of my husband. And if you want to think good things about him, great. If you want to think bad things about him, good for you. Or if you want to think the situation went down like this, good for you. Because it is exhausting trying to set the record straight every time you turn around. Mm-hmm. So at some point, I don't know that I can say when that moment happened, but it was within my first 2 years on the job where I had to say, I need to stand on my own and be my own agent, because this is now my passion. I love what I do. I live for what I do. I believe in what I do. And so I hired on as Stacy Mareno, but I changed my name back to my maiden name. And from that point on, I just went forth to conquer as Stacy Weathers.
Throughout your career, and maybe this dissipated as the memory of that went away for other people, did you feel like you had to work twice as hard? Or not necessarily because of that, maybe you felt like you had to work twice as hard because you were female, one or the other?
I think both are accurate to say. I did feel evaluated. She's here, she's a widow. Is she here because of that? Is she here because she's going to be a good agent? I knew through comments that I was being evaluated and I was going to have to prove myself. And so, there's a time, first person at the search warrant, last person to leave. First person on an op, last person to leave. Ask the questions. Say yes to whatever shitty assignment you're going to get as a baby agent. You're going to be the finder at the search warrants. You're going to, pat down all these, defendants or whatever. And you don't say no. You do it.
Speaking of which, tell me the story about you having to pat down all the females and then
So there was a time in San Diego Field Division where on the Narcotics Task Force, the NTF, made up of 5 teams of DEA, state and locals. There was a time where I was the only female. And so they were always, hey, Stacy, I just arrested a female. Can you come to holding and pat her down? Hey, Stacy, I arrested another one. And after a while, it just got old. And so one California PD guy came up and he's like, Stacy, sorry, but I just arrested a female. Can you come pat her down? And it was one of those days where I'd had it. So, I throw the pen. I said, damn it, Mike. I'm so sick and tired of patting down all these skanks that you're bringing in here. It's nasty. I'm sick of it. You go do it. You're trained in it just as much as I am, if not more. You've been on the job longer. I lose my shit for whatever reason. And he's like, no, Stacy, no, really, this time she is hot. She has, and I quote, she's got the best rack you've ever seen. I'm like, does that sweeten the deal? No, it doesn't. Come on, Stacy, come on. No, really, she's gorgeous. I'm like, fine. So I go in there, put the gloves on, turn around, She's clean. She doesn't have anything. Okay. In San Diego, stateside, females go to one location, men go to another. He takes her to female. Middle of the night phone call. Yeah, you're going to have to come get this defendant because he belongs at the male facility. So the next day I come into the office and there's all these stupid anatomy school books on my desk. And they're like, oh, you need to know. And I was like, hey, she didn't have drugs or guns on her. She was fine. So yeah, I did kind of lose my shit that day.
So Stacy, during your career, I think it's fair to say you spent an awful lot of time overseas. You were in Islamabad, Pakistan, Kabul, Afghanistan, Ankara, Turkey. You were in Iraq. You ended up in Mexico City. Was there ever a sense that you got some of these assignments? And I wouldn't call some of these assignments are not plum in my estimation at all, but maybe some of them are highly desirable. Was there any sense that you got those positions because of some sort of sympathy?
The short answer is no.
Okay.
But what I will say is the domino effect of being an agent's wife, a domino effect of meeting all the people that were overseas working with Frank, and those connections or friendships, I think, set up the stage for me to go overseas. Case in point. One of the supervisors that was in Bogota at the time went on to become the head of security programs at headquarters. He came out to San Diego for whatever reason, and he made it a point to come by my desk and just talk with me because we knew each other from back in the day. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, what are you guys working on? And I said, at this point, we had just taken down another T3. I said, we just took down a T3. We're kind of, letting the dust settle, figuring things out. And he said, oh, well, now might be a good time. Do you want to come to do a 2-month TDY at headquarters for Administrator Tandy's security detail? Absolutely. Of course I do. So I would not have had that opportunity had I not met him previously.
Sure.
So then I go do this 2-month TDY on Tandy's detail. And as much fun as that was, what it did set up for me at the time, I had put in for Islamabad, Pakistan. I happened to cross paths with the 15, who was over the Middle East region, which then set up a face-to-face interview, which led to a selection. So none of that would have played out, but I don't think I got that particular selection because of what happened.
Fair to say, I think it's more who you know more than anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's chance, it's opportunity, it's timing, it's who you know.
Okay, so Islamabad, Pakistan would not be in my top 10. Why aren't you putting in for London, Switzerland? Why do you put in for Pakistan?
That's a good question. There was a period where I thought, hey, maybe I want to go back to South America. Back when I was still fueled by the motivation of honoring Frank's name. And well, maybe I should go back and retrace his footsteps and do that. And then the first BQ list comes out and there's 100 names on it. So I'm like, well, this isn't really working in my favor. At the time, it was after 9/11, and a lot of the war of terror was percolating. Military was getting sent over there. At least in my little world, I was starting to hear and take notice of the Afghan drug traffickers and their possible role within the war on terror. And it was intriguing. It was an adventure that I'm always looking for and pursuing. But I didn't know, or I didn't think at that time, DEA would send a female straight into Afghanistan. And I I don't know at the time that there were any females. I don't know. But I thought, I don't think they're going to send a female. But Islamabad, that's a neighbor. That's a border. That's pretty doggone close. Let me give that a shot. And that's why I did it.
Mm. What was your experience in the Middle East as a female?
It is challenging, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. I started out keeping my mouth shut, which is difficult, but just observing like the interaction. And to be fair, that's what I should be doing. I'm not going to go in and know everything and know how to work with counterparts or how to work with foreign informants. I didn't know that. So I just looked and I kind of followed people that were already in place. Luckily for me, when I got to Islamabad, I do think I was the first female agent post 9/11, which, as I have been told, the environment in Pakistan pre 9/11 and post 9/11 are two drastically different scenarios. But I only know my world. But Islamabad itself had embassies from many, many other foreign countries. It was somewhat international in that aspect. So that didn't seem that odd. But so thankful that before I got there, there was a wonderful intel agent named Carrie who was just rock solid. She's the best intel you will ever work with. And she faced the same challenge, being a female coming in, and she interacted with our vetted unit, not to the degree as an agent, but she did. And she would brief cases and she would put in requests for intel. And she was so good and just so respectful and so smart that by the time I get there, I can follow her lead and I can see her success and how she handles it. And it also broke the ice for me to work with their agents one-on-one as an agent. It wasn't smooth at first. It was a lot of being in a room with our foreign counterparts next to a male agent. And if they had a question directly about my case, they're asking him. And then he would just, I had great agents. He would just turn to me and say, Stacy, answer. And, and I would. And it just took time and time and time of just knowing the job and doing the job. And showing up when they needed help, getting them information to the degree that I could pass to them, asking them about their cases. I mean, it wasn't an environment where at that point I wasn't going out on ops with our vetted unit, but damn sure asking them when they got back, how did it go? What happened? Is everybody okay? And just showing them, hey, I do care. And if you're on the bottom of the totem pole or the very top, you're going to get respect from me. And I'm going to treat you that way. And I think just over time that that worked well. It had some good successes.
So tell me about the guy. Tell me about the guy that wouldn't look you in the eye.
Shaquille. After being in Islamabad for about 1.5 years, I was asked, would I be willing to go to one of our safe houses that was in Balochistan? So Balochistan, although not a country, is an ethnic group that is together in their own united community, united country.
It just sounds like you're making up a country.
I know, but I promise that it is legit. And it is a geographical area that does cover corners of Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan. And the capital is Quetta. And so at that time it was just a house on an army base where the vetted unit lived and worked on the basement. Me and another agent lived and worked on the first floor and the second floor. And we worked hand in hand. It was not international. It was no females. It was on an army base, which they had no females in the army at the time. I was it. And there was a supervisor leader of our vetted unit at the time. His name was Shaquille. Um, turns out to be a great guy, but in the beginning, he would not make eye contact with me. If he was told to talk to me, he would look straight at my shoes every single time. It took a whole year of working with him before he would venture to look somewhere in the vicinity of my eyes. And it wasn't until working with him for a whole year, I finally said, Shaquille, why will you not look at me? And he explained to me, he said, I have never talked to a female outside of my family. I'm engaged to be married. It's an arranged marriage. I'm engaged. I've not spoken to her. And these are just little cultural differences that maybe you've heard of or you've read about, but until you actually experience one-on-one with somebody, that is just, it's profound. I just walked away thinking, I can't imagine walking in his shoes. But there were so many little instances like that being overseas that just, I take to heart, that I learned so much from a lot of the foreign counterparts I worked with.
So you're over there after 9/11 and you're in Pakistan, you're in Afghanistan, you're in Turkey, Iraq, you're in, basically hotspots. How much is your interaction with the military guys over there?
100%. They were the infrastructure that we would rely on. So in terms of intel gathering or straight up drug trafficking ops surveillance or whatever we were doing with our vetted unit, we would do that without the military. When I got, and the military was not super active in Pakistan. They built the infrastructure that we worked within in Afghanistan. So when I would hop over there, and I was not stationed in Afghanistan, I would go in for a period of 30, 45 days, what have you. But to get out of Kabul, to get off the compound, to do things, you did have to partner with the military. Now, I wasn't embedded with them like our fast guys were. It was nothing like that. We would build up a target package and, work within the Afghan judicial system to get a warrant, to do a search warrant, to now go out to a location, and we would hit that location, but we would do it with a military unit. So I predominantly went up into the northern area of Kunduz.
Tell me about faking it till you make it. You're in a helicopter, you're running dark, black, whatever you want to call it. What happens?
You just keep your mouth shut and you act like you've been there before and you act like you're not scared. But the first time we fly up to Kunduz, nobody told me that at some point they're going to shoot out flares to draw attention if anybody was going to target helicopters. So nobody tells me that there's going to be this flare. It's not a boom. It's not but it will get your attention. And if you don't know that the flares are going away from you, one might assume they're coming towards you. So I would just sit there and okay, all right, nobody else is freaking out, so I'm not going to freak out. So it was a lot of fake it till you make it, without a doubt.
Tell me about your experience on the C-130 where you realize, hey, these are the guys.
So I had a very strong appreciation for the military, obviously because of my father. And through him, we were always doing events on the military base, and they were always patriotic in nature. If we went to a movie on the base, it started out with standing up and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. It was just a very patriotic environment that I always carried with me. So I appreciate what the military was doing, and I support them, and oh my God, the sacrifices that they're making. But the first time I was instructed to go to Baghdad, we would fly commercial Turkish Airlines into Kuwait. Kuwait was a transition area where you then now go under DOD. And then you get transported to the base there in Kuwait City. And now you're going to get on a C-130 to take you into Baghdad. And I was instructed before you get off of the Turkish airline flight, be sure to take the barf bag from the seat pocket in front of you. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing it, but okay. It comes into play later on. But so I'm just with another agent who has done this route a couple times, and I'm just following his lead. And again, act like you've been there. Don't do anything stupid. Fall in line. If this line's marching this way, you march that way. And because we were not military, all the military loaded first. So we were some of the last to load. And I walk up the ramp and I see hundreds of military people crammed in their jump seats. First time I've ever seen anything like this or experienced anything like this. And I stop and I just look around and I go, these are the heroes. These are the warriors. These are the people who are sacrificing their lives, themselves, their relationships. And they're doing it. I'm bouncing in for a week. I know I'm leaving, hopefully in a week. These guys are coming on open-ended orders, or maybe it's their second time for a year tour. Like, it was just, it had such a profound effect on me. That I get in my jump seat and I'm just feeling emotions, patriotism I've never felt before, And I look around and I'm still kind of taking it in. And the back door of the C-130 starts to close. And hanging on the back door of the C-130 as it closes also comes down the U.S. flag. Oh, I lost it. I put my sunglasses on. I had tears. It was an emotional experience for me. And it just made my heart swell to see people that selfless defending their country. Now, not getting into the politics of it all, whether you believe in the mission or not, completely irrelevant to me. That was just an amazing show of force that I was very proud in that moment to see that.
What'd you need the barf bag for?
So depending on the climate of Baghdad, they are prone to doing a tactical landing. And basically what that is they are going to corkscrew down as fast and as quickly as possible. So to avoid any, oncoming, and you will be challenged to keep things down. And if somebody on the far end of the C-130 loses it, okay, well now it's a chain effect that's going people to people to people. And I did not want to be that person. So I was sweating, just trying to get through it. So I never used the barf bag, but I was very glad that I had it.
Throughout your course of career, do you think you had a specialty?
Where I felt like I was most effective and what I really, really liked to do was international conspiracy cases. It was just a wonderful challenge of, okay, this country has this set of evidence or these informants, but the drug trafficking unit's over here. So how do we partner that up? And then the other piece of the puzzle is the money laundering aspect of it, because it's all interrelated. So I loved trying to put that puzzle together and trying to fit the pieces together and trying to working with the counterparts and explaining to them, okay, I understand you want to take off this courier, but this courier is part of a much bigger picture, and just trying to mentor them to look at the bigger picture, to look at the entire region. And I loved it. And I loved following the money.
Just such a different perspective than, say, I don't know, a state and local in Indiana, taking off 2 ounces of Coke, and I'm sure you saw that in California, but now you're overseas and you get to see, okay, this is where it's produced. This is how it's broken down. This is how it ends the U.S. I mean, just something nobody else gets to see.
I love to see it start to finish.
Yeah.
And doing whatever I could in my little role within that to prevent that from happening. And with that comes a lot of challenges, right? Because now you're bringing agents from different countries, and every country has their own wants or agendas. And so there was a lot of targeting workshops and meetings and, heated conversations, who's going to take venue and da da da. And, but that's all part of it.
Yeah.
And hashing it out. And I was able to see some very high level traffickers, terrorists get caught. And that's very satisfying.
How do you end up in international training in 2014? Why do you want to go there?
So at that point, I had worked with foreign counterparts a lot, and I felt like I had developed not a skill, not a strength, but the ability to meet them where they are and work with them there. And since I had success with that, I enjoyed that kind of interaction. Also, at that time, I had acted as a mentor to many foreign counterparts, and I had also put together training classes for them. Like, it would be a counterpart would come up and say, hey, my guys, they don't really know how to interview very well because maybe they do it more physically than what DEA does, or drastically more physically than DEA does. So how do we talk to people? How do we, interview people? Can you come give a class on that? And so by doing that, I started to see other officers get a little bit more confident in all these skills. And I liked that. I liked being a part of, I'm not going to say impart wisdom, right? But helping them get to a better skill set, maybe. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, I was participating in a class overseas that international training was coming out to do. And so I met up with, I think it was the 14 at the time, had a conversation with them. At this point also, I had been out of the country for 9 years. It was time. I came back stateside, and it just kind of worked. I did enjoy my time at international training. I really did.
NARC guys are notorious for type A personality. They know it all and everything else. When you're in international training and you're giving talks or training and everything else, is there one group that is worse than others to talk to with? I mean, is there some group, or maybe it's a country, maybe it's whatever else, but is there one group that goes, man, these guys don't listen to anything I say?
Yes.
And who is that? Okay, never mind. Okay.
But there are some countries that come in. We know it all. We know our country better than DEA ever will.
Got it.
And they politely listen,
okay,
or doodle or whatever. They spend the time in the classroom.
Yeah.
But you can tell that you're talking to a wall.
Okay.
But maybe one person in that class picks up something.
Sure.
And you hope for that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's touch on this topic. So when you were in international training, you developed a course, Genders in Law Enforcement.
Yes.
What was that all about?
Well, it just something that I saw over time. Being a female in DEA, mm-hmm. It's talked about. It's common knowledge. Are there inherent issues, or are there benefits? Are there is there any prejudice? It always was in and around conversations. And while I can say it played a role in my career, I can say both good and bad. Mm-hmm. I remember getting selected for something and getting the sense, as I'm talking with the supervisor who's making the selection, getting the sense that he might be picking me because he wants to ask me out. Or he might be picking me because he wants me near him to see if he could ask me out. I very much got a sense of that. Now, on the flip side, I am interviewing for a position that I really, really wanted. And I'm talking with the supervisor, and it was a small office. There was a 14 and 4 agents, all male. And I knew this. I did my homework. I knew the makeup of the office, and I was talking with him, and every question he asked, I had a suitable answer. I had a very good answer, and I had successes that I could cite as to how I knew the job and why I thought it was a good fit. And I wasn't coming across arrogant. I was stating facts. And when he realized that I had answers and I had the substance for the job, the questions changed. The tone, somewhat condescending. Like, you're not really sure you want this job, right? You know, things like that were worked into the conversation. And then ultimately, one of the last things he said was, you know, you're qualified. I just don't think you're a good fit. Now, I can take that many different ways. Knowing what I knew about the people and the background check that I had done on everything, it was because I was a female. So there was good and bad. And then overseas, I saw, especially within the Afghan women in my classes, or the Afghan women that I worked with, they were some of the sharpest individuals I have ever met. They studied, they knew the answer to every question. You could give them a scenario and they could give back to you an amazing op plan or an amazing response. But they were so stifled. I had one through an interpreter tell me, I know exactly all these answers, but I can't speak up in class. I'm not allowed to. Because if I get out of line, you know, then there's other conversations to be had. And I just thought, I don't like that. I don't like that. And then I would also see some South and Central American classes would come in that are maybe not as strict, more animated, more energetic. And I would see the interaction of the females and the males. And it was just something that I thought, okay, you know what? We're all adults. Let's have a class on gender and law enforcement. And I, you know, of course, immediately, you know, the girls are piping in, oh, this happened, or this guy hit on me, or, you know, this, that, and the other thing. But conversely, guys would say, I did not get a promotion because the selection went to a female because he wanted to date the female. So there was a prejudice there against guys that I guess I didn't give as much thought to as I did the prejudice against women. So we had a lot of spirited debate on that. And I really enjoyed having those conversations. And I just, the takeaway from the whole class was get it out in the open, you know?
You retire out of the Mexico City office. Why go there? And is there any concern as a DEA agent after what's happens to Kiki down in Mexico about your own physical safety down there?
Yes, I think Mexico City, because we have had a large office there for a long period of time, there was maybe more a sense of relaxation. It wasn't as heightened. I didn't feel it as heightened as, like, say, Bogota. Other people had different experiences. So, you know, we have had personnel down there that have, you know, had their watches stolen or, you know, carjacking. So I don't take it lightly, but also for me, my perspective, my optic in the whole thing is, okay, now I'm in my third foreign country that I'm, you know, my second language I had to learn. I'm spending an entire day trying to get my cable hooked up because I don't know the right word for fiber optic. You know, I was coming at it looking through an optic of somebody closer to the end of their career than the beginning. So maybe I was not jaded, but I took it all in stride, maybe a little bit more so. But I got selected before COVID, finished language school before COVID, and then everything shut down. So when things opened up in the States, okay, now we can process you and get you down to Mexico City. Well, they were behind us in their COVID protocols. So they were still on lockdown. So we had a designated day where you could go into the embassy And then other than that, you're, supposed to quarantine. But so it was a difficult initial start. And the office was also coming off the heels of a lot of OPR issues. So it wasn't a very settled environment.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up working with some great colleagues that I learned a lot from, that I am still in touch with today. There was some management down there that I did not particularly like their management style, we'll say. But in the end, they asked me to be the Mexico City agent on a very high level case of a former Mexican official that was being tried in New York. And so I was able to pick up on that, pick up the ball with that, recruit informants, try to convince the informants to testify in trial, which then is the domino effect of, okay, well, that's putting him in jeopardy or her in jeopardy. It's putting the family in jeopardy. Now we got to relocate. But I liked it. And I felt that my background afforded me the skills and the mindset to be able to do that very, very effectively and get that through. So I was in Brooklyn for 5-6 weeks on that trial. And, a big federal trial like that is one great way to end your career. And so I was really glad I got to do that.
So you ended your career, you retired as a special agent, right?
Yes.
Why didn't you ever go the management route?
There were times that I did put my hat in the ring, and it wasn't more a driving force of, I want to be a manager. Because truth be told, I mean, the bullshit that managers tell us, I didn't want to have to regurgitate and tell somebody else, like, okay, you're PTARs. Like, I know, but you PTAR. It was, at that point, it just kind of bullshit. But the position was a position or in a location that I wanted to do more so than I want to be a supervisor. And I mean, clearly I never got promoted. So I think that was just the world telling me, Stacy, you're going to stay on this track.
Yeah.
So
looking back on your career, is there anything that you would do differently?
I can't imagine my career playing out any other way. There was a time when I thought maybe I wanted to remain an agent, but not in an enforcement role, and maybe go into like the polygraph world, but that did not work out.
Okay.
We won't talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, last couple questions. How did law enforcement affect your family?
I have a very small family. No children, not married. So I think with the family that I did have, it was just kind of an unspoken, we're just not going to talk about the bad things. Like when Stacy comes to visit or whatever, we're just going to enjoy our time together. So I think there was a willful blind eye maybe. And just, so, they showed me support. They showed me their concern, but I also shielded them. There's a lot of things that I just never told them. And when they would ask, oh, everything's great. Yeah. Blushton's great. So I think I don't think it changed them, but I think it is kind of how we chose to handle it.
How about this? We discussed this yesterday, and we don't have to talk about this portion of it, but being a female in law enforcement and dating, you have a challenge, at least I think you have a challenge, of being this strong woman on the job, but maybe somebody wants kind of this softness. What's your take on that? Do you see the yin and yang of that? Is that really a challenge?
There's definitely the two sides of the spectrum, and I can only speak for me that at various times in my career, I fluctuated on that spectrum. Obviously, in Afghanistan, you're really over here doing the job. I'm an agent. And then in the quieter times or maybe the less stressful times, that soft side comes out. So um, some guys, they just want that hard charger, and you're going to go through a door with me, and that's what I like. So when the soft side comes out, it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, what's,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. Maybe some guys don't want the independent, she can change her own light bulb kind of person. They want I guess the softer, more traditional, I would say, personality. So it's kind of been an ebb and flow in my life.
Mm. Can you look back on your career? Obviously, you started off with this incident that changes your life and changes your world perspective. But can you look back on when you started law enforcement to now? How did law enforcement affect the way that you see people in society?
I think it's that also had an ebb and flow to it. It started out, I'm doing domestic cases. I'm on the street. I'm with NTF, and you are evaluating everybody is a dickhead, right? Like you have that guard up, and you're evaluating, and you're looking, and you're checking out your environment, and you learn that, and you practice it, not, and I did take that overseas, don't get me wrong, but my perspective overseas taught me that differences in culture is not necessarily bad. Differences in a foreign individual's personality that is cultural based is not bad. It's me opening my eyes and not judging a book by its cover, doing it cautiously though, but allowing myself to learn about other people's personalities and cultures, and instead of just writing them off by, oh, you're so and so, you're no good.
Mm-hmm.
Giving people a chance. Now you do it cautiously. You don't do it without care. You never lose the agent mindset, but I'd like to think I'm more open to differences within people.
So a lot of people think that they're jaded after being in law enforcement and see things differently and stuff. Do you think that you have a different perspective because you spent time overseas? I mean, like, you spent a long time overseas, so you can see the difference in cultures. But once you get back domestically, and do you have that guy's a scumbag, that type of thing? And if you do, has that gotten softer, lessen as you have gotten older and been out of law enforcement?
So that sense of being jaded, yes, it does stick with you. I think it has softened maybe a little. It will never go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, always kind of on guard a little bit, but I guess I'm also maybe a little bit more open to, okay, maybe you're not a complete dickhead. Maybe you're just partial, kind of with that sort of thing. So, but there's a sense of jadedness because of the incident and because of what happened that I have to work on. I do realize that.
As much as you want to talk about it, what are you doing in retirement?
Well, my family has a ranch in Western Oklahoma, and whenever they were becoming elderly and not able to run it as well as they wanted to, it was kind of around the time that I was saying, hey, retirement is probably something I need to think about. Because there was a time where I knew I wasn't giving it 100%. And I'm not going to shortchange myself. I'm not going to shortchange DEA. I'm not going to shortchange the agent sitting next to me. So I knew it was time. And they tell you, you know when it's time to go. And I was having those thoughts about that time that they were starting to need additional hands on the ranch. So I relocated back to help them.
You're raising cattle, though?
Raising cattle, yes. which is, you would think is not that hard, that it is hard.
Oh no, I can see it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
So if people want to come down and be on your dude ranch,
come on down. I welcome any and all hands on deck. I really do. No, but it's fun, and it's giving me time, quality time with my family.
Yeah.
As they get older, but also that I've missed out on by being overseas.
Yeah.
And so I was able to have, I guess what I could say, a selfish career. I did what I wanted to do, where I wanted to. And it's now giving me the opportunity to come back and be here for them.
Yeah.
So I'm very appreciative of that.
Stacy, I can't thank you enough. It was just such an honor to have you share your story with me, and thank you very much.
Thank you.